The first thing Elias Rowan noticed was the silence, not the absence of sound. There was plenty of that. The low hum of the station's power core vibrated through the floor, distant mechanical clicks echoed behind the walls, and somewhere far above, cargo rails screamed as something massive shifted position. No, this silence was different, intentional, focused, as if the space itself had decided not to interrupt what was about to happen. The second thing he noticed was her eyes. They were not glowing. That would have been easier. Glowing eyes belonged to warning labels and briefing manuals. These eyes were calm, pale blue with an unsettling clarity, like frozen water that had never known turbulence. They held him without effort, without challenge. Simply acknowledged him. "You are late," she said. Her voice carried no accusation, just fact. Elias glanced instinctively at the chrono display on his wrist, then immediately realized how ridiculous that was. Time inside the sanctum didn't behave like time anywhere else. He'd been warned. The warnings had been vague. They always were. "I followed the route provided," he replied carefully. "If the path changed, I wasn't informed." "But the path changes for everyone," she said. "You arrived when you were meant to." That didn't help. She stood at the center of the chamber, framed by soft white light that seemed to originate from nowhere and everywhere at once. The room itself was circular, seamless, its walls smooth like polished stone grown rather than carved. No visible seams, no obvious technology. It was one of those ancient places that made modern engineering feel embarrassingly loud. And she belonged to it. Her appearance was disarming. Pale skin with a faint warmth beneath it like light filtered through porcelain. Hair cut in a precise, blunt line at her jaw, white blonde and perfectly still, as though gravity negotiated with her before acting. She wore a high-collared dark uniform that hugged her frame with understated authority. No ornamentation, no rank markers Elias recognized. Except for the symbol. A small geometric mark glowed faintly at the center of her forehead, just below the hairline. It wasn't decorative. Elias knew that immediately. The symbol pulsed once softly as his gaze lingered on it. His chest tightened. "I wasn't told who I'd be meeting," he said. "Only that my clearance was unusually specific." Yes, her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. That was intentional. He swallowed. "Then may I ask who you are?" She considered him, truly considered him, as though she were not just seeing his face, but the weight he carried behind it, the years of translation work, the fractured sleep patterns, the quiet habit of noticing things others overlooked. "I am called Aeryn," she said, "by my people." A pause in "by others." "They do not use my name." Elias felt that settle somewhere deep in his ribs. She stepped closer, not abruptly. Each movement was deliberate, economical. The light followed her, adjusting without visible source. The symbol on her forehead brightened by a fraction. "You were selected because you listen," Aeryn continued, "not because you obey. That's an unusual criterion." "Yes, it has eliminated many candidates." She stopped an arm's length away, close enough that Elias could see the fine detail of her features, the almost imperceptible differences that marked her as not human, the symmetry that was too precise, the stillness that suggested immense control rather than passivity. "You are not afraid," she observed. "I am," Elias said honestly. "I'm just used to functioning while I am." That earned him something closer to a real smile. "Good," Aeryn said softly. "Then you will not break easily." The floor beneath them shifted. Elias staggered, instinctively reaching out, but the movement stopped before he lost balance. The chamber responded, realigning itself with a smooth, silent adjustment. "What is this place?" he asked. "This is where we decide whether we continue," she said. "Continue what?" She turned away from him then, walking toward the far side of the sanctum. As she moved, the walls reacted, light patterns emerging like constellations drawn in breath. Elias followed, his footsteps muted. At the center of the far platform stood something that made his heart skip, a structure, or perhaps an object. Tall, elegant, unmistakably humanoid in silhouette. Armor. It stood upright, suspended slightly above the platform, its surface smooth and dark with veins of faint light running through it like dormant circuitry. It was beautiful in a way that bypassed logic entirely. Ancient. Waiting. Aeryn stopped beside it. "This armor," she said, resting her hand against its surface, "has not been worn in 312 of your years." Elias stared. "Why show it to me?" She looked back at him, eyes steady. "Because," she said, "it has been responding to you since you entered the station." The symbol on her forehead pulsed again, brighter this time. And for the first time since arriving, Elias felt the silence lean in, as if the room itself was listening and waiting for him to understand why. The armor reacted before Elias touched it. He hadn't moved closer, at least not consciously, but the faint veins of light along its surface brightened, flowing upward in slow, deliberate patterns. Not a flare, not a warning, recognition. Aeryn's hand stilled. "You feel that," she said. It wasn't a question. Elias nodded slowly, his throat tight. "It's not sound or heat, it's like pressure, the kind you feel before a storm breaks." The armor pulsed once, in agreement or amusement. Elias couldn't tell which disturbed him more. Aeryn withdrew her hand and stepped back, granting him space he hadn't realized he needed. The symbol on her forehead dimmed slightly, though it didn't vanish. "You weren't told what this assignment truly was," she said, "because most humans would have refused it." "I don't recall being given the option," Elias replied. "My orders said linguistic consultation. That usually means translating dead treaties or explaining why someone accidentally insulted a religious object." "This object," Aeryn said quietly, "is neither dead nor symbolic." She gestured toward the armor. "It is a conduit." The word settled heavily between them. "A conduit for what?" Elias asked. "For continuity," she replied. "For memory, for will." He frowned. "Those are abstract concepts. Militaries usually prefer things that explode or don't." Aeryn's gaze softened, not with humor but with something closer to fatigue. "This predates militaries," she said. "It was created before my people separated power from responsibility." Elias studied the armor more closely now. The surface wasn't metal, not exactly. It had a depth to it, layers beneath layers, like compressed time made solid. As he stepped closer, the light patterns shifted again, aligning subtly toward him. "I'm not trained for this," he said. "I don't command fleets. I don't lead armies." "No," Aeryn agreed. "You observe, you translate. You notice what others ignore. That hardly qualifies me too." "To stand beside me," she finished. Elias stopped. The silence returned, heavier now. "I have stood alone for a very long time," Aeryn continued. "Not physically. There are always attendants, advisors, guards, but none of them can hear what I hear." She turned her head slightly, eyes unfocusing, not toward the armor but beyond it. "This station," she said, "is awake, has been for centuries. It listens. It waits, and it speaks only in patterns, in meanings that require interpretation." Elias felt a chill trace his spine. "And you," she said, looking back at him, "have been answering it without realizing. I've never been here before." "No," she said softly, "but you have been listening all your life." The word struck uncomfortably close. Elias remembered nights on transit ships, unable to sleep because the hum of engines felt wrong. Times he'd corrected translations instinctively, knowing something didn't align long before he could explain why. Moments when ancient texts felt less like records and more like conversations paused mid-thought. "You're saying this place knows me." "I am saying," Aeryn replied, "that it has been waiting for someone who can hear without trying to control." She moved toward the armor again, slower this time. "My people once used this armor to bind themselves to the continuum," she said. "Not as rulers, as stewards, two minds, always two, one to bear the weight, one to ensure it does not distort." Elias exhaled. "And now there's only one of you left." "Yes." The admission carried no drama, just truth. "My predecessors tried to compensate," Aeryn went on, "to become both roles at once. They failed, not immediately, but inevitably." She lifted her sleeve just enough for Elias to see faint geometric scars tracing her forearm. Not injuries, interfaces. Each attempt leaves a mark, she said. On the mind, on the self. Elias looked away, unsettled. Then why continue? Because if I do not, Aeryn said, this station will eventually choose someone else. Someone louder. Someone who believes power is proof of worth. She met his eyes again. I would rather risk myself than allow that. The armor pulsed once more, brighter than before. Elias felt it then, an unmistakable pull not toward the object but toward her. Not attraction, alignment. Why me? He asked quietly. Aeryn hesitated. For a long time, she said, I believed the station was simply malfunctioning, responding randomly. But when you arrived, she placed her hand flat against the armor. It calmed. The symbol on her forehead glowed softly. You are not here to wear it, she said. Not yet. You are here to stand where it cannot. Elias swallowed. And if I refuse? Aeryn nodded once. Then I will continue alone until I cannot. The chamber breathed around them. Elias looked at the armor, then at her. He had spent his life translating meaning for others, never expecting to become part of the sentence himself. I'll need time, he said. Aeryn inclined her head. You will have it, not much, but enough. She stepped back, giving him space again. Rest, she added. The station will not let you leave. That should have alarmed him. Instead, Elias felt something close to relief. Sleep did not come easily. Elias lay on the narrow rest platform assigned to him, staring at a ceiling that slowly rearranged its light patterns in response to his breathing. He had not been given restraints, guards, or warnings. The station didn't need them. It knew where he was. More unsettling still, it knew when he was awake. The hum beneath the floor shifted subtly every time his thoughts drifted toward Aeryn. He gave up pretending to rest and sat up. I know you can hear me, he said into the quiet. The lights dimmed slightly. Not acknowledgement, attention. Elias exhaled slowly. I don't know what you want. The response came not in words but in sensation, a pressure behind his eyes. Not painful, curious, like fingers testing the surface of glass. He closed his eyes before panic could take hold. You're old, he murmured. Older than language, older than intention. Images surfaced, unbidden, stars forming and collapsing. Hands too many-jointed, not human, assembling structures around something vast and luminous. Voices overlapping, not in sound but in alignment. Agreement made manifest. Two figures standing together, always two. Elias gasped and the sensation withdrew instantly, as if startled by his reaction. All right, he said quietly. Boundaries, we should establish those. The lights steadied. He wasn't sure whether that was compliance or amusement. When he finally slept, it was shallow and crowded with half-remembered impressions. He woke to the sound of footsteps that didn't echo. Aeryn stood at the threshold of the chamber, her presence grounding in a way Elias hadn't anticipated. She wore no uniform now, only a simple, sleeveless garment in muted gray, functional rather than ceremonial. The symbol on her forehead was dim, almost invisible. You are speaking to it, she said. It wasn't an accusation. I didn't mean to, Elias replied. It just started listening. Yes, Aeryn said softly. That is how it begins. She stepped inside. The room adjusted instantly, lights warming, angles softening. Elias noticed it before she did. It reacts to you too, he said. Aeryn paused. Less than to you. She approached, stopping a careful distance away. What did it show you? She asked. Elias hesitated. Fragments, creation, assembly, two figures, always two. Her expression tightened, not fear but recognition. That is further than anyone else has reached without contact, she said. That's not reassuring. No, she agreed, it is not. She sat across from him, folding her legs beneath her with practiced ease. For a moment, she seemed smaller, less the embodiment of a lineage and more a woman carrying something too large to set down. You asked why I continue, she said quietly. Why I keep attempting to bind. Elias nodded. The first time, Aeryn said, I believed discipline would be enough, preparation, control. I was wrong. She lifted her hand, palm upward. Faint lines shimmered beneath the skin, interfaces dormant but never gone. The station does not respond to command, she continued. It responds to alignment, to shared intention. Elias listened, careful not to interrupt. My predecessor tried to anchor me, she said. A brilliant strategist, fearless, loyal. A pause. He could not let go of outcome. He tried to guide me, to steer. The symbol on her forehead flickered briefly. He fractured, she said simply. Not physically, something narrower. He survived. But he can no longer hear the station or me. Elias felt a quiet horror settle in his chest. And you? I learned, Aeryn said, and I learned alone. Silence stretched between them, thick but not uncomfortable. The station doesn't want obedience, Elias said slowly. It wants coherence. Aeryn looked at him sharply. Yes, she said. That is the word I could not find. He huffed a quiet, humorless laugh. That's my job, finding the word. The air shifted, not dramatically, just enough that Elias felt it in his bones. You feel it too, Aeryn said. Like something lining up, he replied. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were steady. The station is accelerating its cycle, she said. External pressures are increasing. You mean a threat? Yes, and when it comes, Aeryn met his gaze. I will have to attempt the binding again. Elias didn't look away. And this time, she added, it will not allow me to do so alone. The implication settled slowly, inexorably. You're not asking, Elias said. No, Aeryn agreed. I am informing. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. You realize I have no training for this, no conditioning, no implants. You have awareness, she said, and you are still whole. That landed harder than he expected. The lights dimmed, then brightened again in a subtle rhythm that matched neither of their heartbeats, but somehow accommodated both. If this goes wrong, Elias said quietly, what happens to us? Aeryn's voice was steady. We lose ourselves. Not all at once, piece by piece. And if it goes right? She hesitated. Then, she said, neither of us will ever be entirely alone again. The station hummed softly around them. Not approval, anticipation. The first warning did not come as an alarm. It arrived as absence. Elias noticed it while standing at the edge of the observation corridor, watching the void beyond the station's translucent hull. The distant stars were still there, but something between them had gone quiet. No background radiation drift. No faint distortion from passing traffic. Space itself felt held. Behind him, the station adjusted its internal rhythm. Aeryn appeared without announcement. You felt it, she said. Yes, Elias replied. Like someone took a breath and never let it out. Her jaw tightened. They have entered the null envelope. Who is they? He asked, though part of him already knew. Those who listen only to outcome, Aeryn said, and believe force is clarity. The lights along the corridor dimmed, shifting toward deeper tones. The station was no longer merely attentive. It was preparing. They've been searching for this place, Elias said slowly, haven't they? For centuries, Aeryn answered. They do not understand it, that has never stopped them. She turned, already moving toward the sanctum. Elias followed without thinking. The station seemed to fold around them, corridors shortening, paths aligning with unsettling efficiency. You said the station doesn't respond to command, Elias said as they walked. What happens when it's threatened? Aeryn didn't answer immediately. When coherence collapses, she said finally, it defends itself. The sanctum was already awake when they arrived. The armor hovered slightly higher than before, light coursing through its veins in slow, deliberate waves. Symbols along the chamber walls glowed in layered patterns Elias' mind struggled to parse, but felt immediately. Too much information. Too fast, Aeryn stopped short. It's escalating, she said. I didn't authorize. The symbol on her forehead flared. She staggered. Elias reached her in 2 strides, steadying her before she fell. The moment his hand closed around her arm, the station reacted. Not violently, precisely. A surge rippled through the chamber, snapping into alignment around them like invisible scaffolding. Elias gasped as sensation flooded him, orientation without direction, awareness without edges. Aeryn sucked in a sharp breath. "Elias," she said tightly, "you need to let go." "I'm not doing anything," he said, though even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't entirely true. The station wasn't responding to action. It was responding to presence. "You're anchoring me," Aeryn said, unintentionally. "I don't know how to stop." Her eyes met his, something raw flickering beneath the control she fought to maintain. "Then listen," she said. "Not to me, to yourself." The armor pulsed sharply. Elias felt it then, the pull not toward the armor but through Aeryn. Her focus, her strain, the immense pressure she carried alone. The station wasn't choosing him. It was compensating. "Don't push," he murmured, more to the space around them than to her. "You're trying to carry the whole structure. Let it rest." Aeryn's breath hitched. "I don't know how," she whispered. Elias closed his eyes. For the first time, he didn't try to understand. He didn't translate. He didn't frame the sensation into meaning. He simply stayed. The pressure eased, not vanished, but redistributed. Aeryn sagged slightly, her forehead resting briefly against his shoulder before she caught herself. The symbol on her forehead dimmed to a steady glow. The station exhaled. A long, resonant hum rolled through the sanctum, deep enough that Elias felt it in his bones. "That," Aeryn said quietly, pulling back just enough to look at him, "was not supposed to happen." "I'm sorry," Elias said automatically. She shook her head once. "No, it stabilized the core." The implications settled between them, heavy and unmistakable. "If you hadn't been here," Elias said, "you would have pushed until something broke." "Yes, and now," Aeryn looked toward the armor, then back at him. "Now the station knows you are not optional." The words landed with terrifying clarity. A tremor rippled through the chamber, different from before, sharper, external. "They've begun probing the perimeter," Aeryn said. "Testing." "How long?" "Minutes," she replied, "perhaps less." Elias swallowed. "Then we don't have time for careful planning." "No," Aeryn agreed. "We have time only for alignment." She stepped closer to the armor. "And this time," she added, not looking at him, "the station will not allow partial connection." Elias felt the weight of that press against his chest. "What happens if we don't fully bind?" he asked. Aeryn met his gaze. "Then it will attempt to choose for us." The armor's light intensified. The sanctum's walls shifted, closing subtly inward. The station was no longer waiting. It was counting. The station made the decision before either of them spoke. The sanctum sealed. Not abruptly. There was no panic in the movement, but with the finality of something ancient concluding that deliberation had ended. The light patterns along the walls sharpened, aligning into dense, layered geometries that made Elias' vision blur if he stared too long. Aeryn inhaled slowly, deliberately. "It's initiating," she said. "We are out of time." Elias felt the shift immediately. Not pressure this time, but direction. The station wasn't pulling them toward the armor. It was arranging them around it. Invisible vectors pressed against his awareness, guiding his position with unsettling precision. Elias took a step back instinctively and found the floor subtly adjusting to keep him aligned where the station wanted him. "Aeryn," he said, keeping his voice steady through sheer effort, "tell me exactly what happens next." Her jaw tightened. "The armor will attempt to establish coherence," she said. "If it fails, the feedback will fracture me. If it succeeds without an anchor." "You lose yourself," Elias finished quietly. "Yes. And with an anchor." Aeryn hesitated. "Then neither of us remains unchanged." The armor's veins flared brighter, light flowing faster now, responding to the station's accelerating rhythm. Elias' heartbeat tried to match it and failed. "Tell me what you're afraid of," he said suddenly. Aeryn's eyes snapped to him. "This is not." "It is," Elias insisted. "You said alignment matters, not control, not outcome. If we're doing this, I need to know what you're holding back." For a long moment, the only sound was the deep, resonant hum of the station's core. Then Aeryn spoke. "I am afraid," she said evenly, "that if I let go even for a moment, Everything I am will dissolve into function. The symbol on her forehead pulsed erratically. I have spent my life maintaining coherence, she continued. For my people, for this station, for the continuum itself. If I stop holding, I do not know who remains. Elias felt that resonate painfully close to home. You won't disappear, he said quietly. You'll still be you, just not alone in it. She laughed once, sharp and brittle. That is easy for you to say. Yes, he agreed, it is. The station surged, not violently, but decisively. The armor unfolded. Plates shifted outward with fluid precision, opening not just physically but conceptually. Elias felt the boundaries of the space stretch, creating room for something vast to pass through. Aeryn stepped backward into the armor's embrace. The first plate locked around her spine. She gasped. Connection established, the station intoned, not in sound but in certainty. Elias staggered as sensation spiked. He felt the armor's awareness brush against his own, vast and impersonal. It did not seek him. It sought completion. Aeryn, he said urgently, her breath came in short bursts. I can feel it, she said. The pull, the expansion, it's too much. Elias didn't think. He stepped forward and placed his hand against the armor's inner frame, just below her collarbone. The moment his skin made contact, the universe fractured. Information flooded him, not data, not images, but states of being. Star systems mapped by intention rather than coordinates. Threat vectors expressed as emotional dissonance. Defense protocols felt like pressure gradients in a sea of force. Elias screamed, or thought he did. Aeryn's scream cut through it. Then, alignment, the flood didn't stop, it organized. Elias felt Aeryn's panic collide with his presence, not overwhelming him but breaking against him like waves against stone. Not because he was stronger, because he wasn't resisting. I'm here, he said, the words grounding him even as his voice echoed across dimensions. You don't have to hold everything. Her breath stuttered. I don't know how to let go, she whispered. Then don't, Elias replied, just share. Something shifted. The armor's light stabilized, flowing in balanced cycles instead of chaotic surges. The station's hum deepened, resonating with both of them. Aeryn's thoughts brushed his awareness, not merged, not invasive. Present. Adjacent, she felt him too, not his memories, his steadiness. The armor sealed fully. Aeryn stood encased in ancient power, her breathing slow and controlled once more, but her eyes were wide with something like awe. I can feel you, she said. You're there like a constant. Elias' knees buckled. He would have fallen if the station hadn't compensated, adjusting gravity just enough to keep him upright. You're not alone, he said again, though he wasn't sure if he was telling her or himself. Outside the sanctum, something struck the station's perimeter. Hard. The station did not flinch. It responded. Power surged outward not as a weapon yet, but as a warning. Aeryn turned her head slowly, the armor moving with her as though it had always belonged to her. They've crossed the threshold, she said. Elias swallowed, the weight of what they had just become settling fully into his bones. Then, he said quietly, let's make sure this holds. The station hummed, satisfied. The first impact reverberated through Elias before he understood what it meant. Not sound, not force, intent. A sharp, invasive pressure brushed against the edge of the station's awareness, probing, calculating. Elias felt it as a wrongness, like a sentence constructed perfectly but with malicious grammar. They're inside the outer lattice, Aeryn said. Her voice carried through the connection, steady but strained. The armor responded to her will instantly, layers of defensive geometry unfolding around the station like invisible petals. Elias staggered as the information load increased. Stars ceased being distant points. They became positions. Vectors, possibilities. I can't, he started. You don't need to process, Aeryn said firmly. Just stay with me. That was the key. Elias stopped trying to understand the flow of data. He anchored himself instead in sensation. His breathing, the steady presence of Aeryn's awareness alongside his, the subtle rhythm they now shared. The pressure stabilized. The station aligned. "They're not attacking directly," Elias said suddenly. "They're listening, trying to map our responses." Aeryn's focus sharpened. "How do you know?" He hesitated. "I don't, I just feel it." The armor pulsed. Confirmation. Enemy vessels slipped into partial visibility beyond the station's shields, their forms distorted by phase-shifting hulls. They were wrong in ways Elias struggled to articulate, designed not for presence, but for intrusion. "They think this place is a tool," Aeryn said coldly. "Something to seize." "They think in endpoints," Elias replied. "We don't." She felt the truth of that and adjusted. Instead of counterattacking, Aeryn altered the station's defensive rhythm, introducing subtle inconsistencies, micro-delays that disrupted predictive targeting. The enemy hesitated. Elias felt it confusion ripple through hostile cognition like static. "That's working," he said, astonished. "Yes," Aeryn replied, "because you're not resisting them, you're misaligning them." The first shot came moments later. A lance of compressed energy tore through space, striking the station's outer barrier. Elias braced instinctively, but the impact dispersed, diffused across layers of geometry that redistributed force like stress through a living organism. The station absorbed it. Aeryn didn't flinch, but Elias felt the cost. A sharp ache bloomed behind his eyes, the echo of strain transferred through the bond. "You felt that," Aeryn said. "Yeah," he replied through clenched teeth. "I'm fine." That was only a probe. Then we should probably discourage further curiosity. The armor systems responded to the shift in their shared intent. This time the station moved, not physically, but perceptually. Space around the enemy vessels twisted subtly, altering reference frames just enough to render their targeting solutions useless. Sensors fed them impossible readings, positions that couldn't exist simultaneously. The enemy fired again, and missed. Aeryn's breath caught not from effort but from realization. "They're blind," she said. "You're bending their perception." Elias swallowed. "I'm not doing anything special. I'm just not agreeing with their assumptions." "That's more dangerous than force," she murmured. The enemy adapted quickly. They always did. A concentrated strike tore through the station's secondary lattice, triggering containment protocols. The station shuddered, deeper this time, and Elias felt something tear at the edge of his awareness. Pain lanced through him. He gasped, vision blurring. "Elias," Aeryn said sharply. "Focus." "I'm here," he rasped. "Just give me a second." The pressure intensified. For the first time since the binding, Elias felt himself slipping, edges fraying as the load exceeded what his unaugmented mind could comfortably handle. And then, Aeryn shifted. She didn't push more power, she shared. Elias felt her discipline, her training, her years of carrying unbearable weight alone, flow not into him but around him, reinforcing, supporting. The pain receded. The station stabilized. They held. The enemy vessels pulled back, recalibrating. "That was close," Elias said weakly. "Yes," Aeryn agreed, "and it will get worse." He let out a shaky breath. "Good to know." A pause. Then softly through the bond, Aeryn said, "You are not a liability." Elias laughed once, breathless. "High praise." "You are essential," she corrected. The word settled between them, heavy with meaning. Outside, the enemy regrouped. Inside, the station hummed, alert, aware, alive. Elias straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "All right," he said. "Let us show them what happens when you try to dominate something that refuses to be simplified." The armor's light brightened. The station listened, and prepared to respond. The enemy stopped pretending. Elias felt it before any sensor confirmed it, a sudden narrowing of possibility, like a corridor collapsing into a single, brutal line. The hostile fleet no longer tested, no longer listened. They committed. "They've locked their vectors," Aeryn said, her voice tight through the bond. All power, all mass, all intent focused on the core. The station reacted instantly. Defensive geometries unfolded in layers so dense Elias could barely track them, each one redistributing force, bending probability, refusing collapse. It wouldn't be enough. Not this time. They're not trying to breach us, Elias realized. They're trying to overload the station's coherence. Aeryn's focus sharpened painfully. Yes, if they destabilize the alignment, the station will fracture itself. And take us with it, Elias said. Silence pressed between them, no fear, no denial, just understanding. The first wave hit like a scream. Elias cried out as hostile intent tore through the lattice, shredding delicate balances they had only just learned to maintain. Pain exploded behind his eyes, his sense of self stretching thin under the strain. I can't hold this, he gasped. Aeryn tried to compensate. That was the mistake. She pushed just a fraction, instinctively reverting to the role she had carried for most of her life. The armor flared violently in response, amplifying her will past safe thresholds. The bond screamed. Aeryn, stop. Elias shouted, you're overcorrecting. I have to, she said, breath ragged. If I let go now. You don't let go, Elias said, forcing the words through the pain. You trust. Another impact slammed into the station. Something fractured, not physically but conceptually. Elias felt it as a tearing sensation along the bond. Separation. The armor surged, attempting to compensate for the loss of coherence. Warning cascaded through the station, not alarms but truth. If the bond collapsed fully, the armor would default to a single bearer. Aeryn would burn. Elias didn't think. He chose. He stepped fully into the connection, not by touching anything, not by forcing access. He opened himself. Every instinct screamed against it, every human limit, every fragile boundary of self, but he let them thin. Let the station feel him completely, not his knowledge, not his intent, his willingness. The effect was immediate. The bond snapped taut, not breaking, but reforming around him as a stabilizing axis. The station recalibrated, redirecting load through Elias instead of amplifying Aeryn. Pain roared. Elias dropped to his knees, vision dissolving into white noise and starlight. Elias. Aeryn's voice cut through, sharp with fear. You're not meant to. I know, he managed. That's why it works. He felt himself spreading, not dissolving, but expanding. His awareness stretched across the station's vast systems, anchoring them through sheer acceptance of scale. He didn't try to control it. He let it exist through him. The enemy fired again, and the station did something unprecedented. It didn't block the attack. It absorbed it, not as energy, but as intention. Hostile force unraveled on contact, stripped of coherence, its destructive purpose dispersed into meaningless noise. The enemy fleet recoiled in visible confusion. They're losing alignment, Aeryn whispered. They don't understand. They can't, Elias said faintly. They don't know how to stop wanting control. The station surged, not outward but inward, collapsing probability gradients, stabilizing its core at a level no single mind could ever sustain alone. The hostile fleet broke formation, retreated, not strategically, instinctively. When the pressure finally eased, Elias felt himself contract again, awareness snapping painfully back into the confines of his body. He collapsed fully this time, breath tearing from his lungs. The armor dimmed. The station settled. Aeryn was beside him instantly, the armor opening in precise, careful segments as she dropped to her knees, catching his shoulders. Elias, she said urgently, stay with me. He laughed weakly. I am just recalibrating. Her hands trembled where they held him. You could have been lost, she said, voice breaking. You went too far. Yes, he agreed, but not alone. The bond remained, changed deeper, not because of power but because of choice. The station hummed softly around them, no longer urgent, balanced, safe, for now. Aeryn rested her forehead against his, the symbol on her brow glowing faintly. You are no longer only an anchor, she said quietly. You are part of the structure. Elias closed his eyes, exhaustion crashing over him. That sounds permanent. Yes, he smiled faintly. Figures. Beyond the station, the void returned to its uneasy normalcy. The enemy was gone but not destroyed. They would return, and next time the cost would be higher. The station knew it, so did they. The station did not sleep. It rested, Elias felt the difference the moment he regained full awareness. The frantic undercurrent that had driven every surface, every system, every pulse of light was gone. In its place was something deeper and slower, like the quiet that follows a storm when the world is still deciding what it has survived. He lay on a low platform in the sanctum, the armor no longer looming above him. It stood dormant now, sealed, its surface dark and unassuming as though it had never awakened at all. Aeryn sat nearby, not standing guard, not commanding, just sitting. She had removed the remaining pieces of interface gear, her uniform replaced with simple dark fabric that softened the sharp authority he had come to associate with her. The symbol on her forehead was still there, but dimmer now, as if it no longer needed to announce itself. "You're awake," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. His voice felt rough but intact. "That's encouraging." Aeryn's lips curved slightly. A real smile, not controlled, not measured. "The station agrees," she said. "It has adjusted your status from critical instability to persistent anomaly." He blinked. "I'm not sure if I should be offended." "But you are categorized as non-expendable," she added. That earned a quiet laugh from him. "High praise," he murmured. Silence settled between them, not awkward, not heavy, familiar. Elias became aware of the bond again, not as pressure or data, but as presence. Aeryn existed just there, adjacent, like a neighboring room he could step into if he chose, or not. "You should know," Aeryn said after a moment. "The Continuum Council has already begun arguing about you." "I've always inspired debate," Elias said dryly. "Usually over whether I've mistranslated something offensive." "But this is different," she replied. "They are afraid." He turned his head to look at her fully. "Of me." "Of what you represent," she corrected. "The station did not choose power, it chose compatibility." Elias considered that. "That's a dangerous precedent." "Yes," Aeryn agreed. "Which is why some of them will want to study you. Others will want to isolate you. A few will argue you should never have been allowed to leave your species at all." "And you?" he asked quietly. She met his gaze without hesitation. "I will argue that you were never taken," she said. "You arrived." The bond warmed subtly at that, not reacting, not amplifying, acknowledging. "What happens now?" Elias asked. Aeryn looked toward the armor. "The station will remain dormant unless coherence collapses again," she said. "The threat has withdrawn, but it has not ended. They learned today." "So did we," Elias said. "Yes." She stood, moving closer, stopping just short of touching him, not because of restraint, but because she no longer needed proximity to be felt. "You changed the structure," Aeryn said softly. "Not just the station, me." Elias exhaled. "I didn't mean to." "I know," she said. "That is why it matters." He shifted, sitting up fully now. The movement brought no pain, only a faint echo, like muscles remembering a greater weight they had briefly carried. "You're not alone anymore," he said, "but you're not replaced either." Aeryn closed her eyes for a moment. "When I first bonded with the armor," she said, "I believed endurance was the same as strength. I believed solitude was necessary." She opened her eyes again. "You showed me that coherence is not something one person maintains. It is something shared." Elias smiled faintly. "I'll add that to my resume. Professional anchor for ancient star structures." She let out a soft, genuine laugh, brief, surprised, unguarded. "You will not be required to stay here," she said after a moment. "Not by me, not by the station." "But," Elias prompted gently. "But the bond will not dissolve simply because distance exists," she finished. "And the station will call again. When it needs us," Elias said. "Yes." They stood there, facing each other in the quiet that followed catastrophe, not triumphant, not afraid. Changed but intact. "Elias," Aeryn said, her voice steady but uncharacteristically open. "When that moment comes, you may choose differently." He considered her carefully. "I might," he said, "but I don't think I will." The station hummed, low, approving, almost fond. Somewhere far beyond the sanctum, systems recalibrated, councils convened, and enemies retreated to reconsider what they had encountered. And at the heart of it all, two minds remained aligned, not fused, not bound by force, connected by choice. The station breathed and waited, not for the next war, but for the next moment when coherence would be needed again.